8:37. I call this meeting of the Common Council Executive Committee to order. Could we, it looks like President Abbas has arrived. While he gets settled, can we have the roll called?
Yes, absolutely. President Abbas.
Present.
Vice President Martin.
Here.
Alder Carter is excused. Alder Bennett.
Here.
Alder Harrington McKinney.
Present.
Alder Heck.
Here.
Alder Lemmer.
Here.
Alder Wahelier. I know she's here. Alder Wahelier.
Present.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you very much, Madeline. Approval of the minute. Can we have a motion?
I move approval of the minutes.
A second.
Motion is moved and seconded. Any comments or questions about the minutes? I do not see any hand raised, so I will consider it as unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving forward is a public comment. Madeline, I believe, do we have any public comment at this moment?
We have no one registered for public comment or on any of the agenda items at this point in time.
Good to know. Thank you very much. We will then move forward to disclosures and recusal. Does anybody wish to disclose or recuse? I do not see any hand raised. We will move forward with agenda item number 2, file number 66488, 2022 Common Council Budget Proposal. I believe, Madeline, you will present that.
Well, actually, we also have Elizabeth York from Finance here, and she did so kindly make a presentation for us if she's allowed to share her screen, and then I can answer any follow-up questions.
Wonderful. Sorry, Elizabeth, I didn't notice you were here, so welcome.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm Betsy York. I'm the Finance Department Budget Analyst for the Common Council. And President Abbas asked me to just give a quick overview of the 2022 budget request for the Common Council. So I thought I would start with just giving you an update on where things are for 2021. We've just been working on our second quarter projections. For the Common Council office for 2021, I'm projecting a surplus of about $58,000. This is primarily due to the vacancy of the Chief of Staff position. The projection does assume that this position will be filled in September. Benefits are projected to be slightly over budget, and that's due to a sick leave payout for Lisa Veldrin's position. Those payouts are budgeted centrally, so we will move budget from the central location into your department's budget to cover that overage. And then finally, supplies and services at this point are projected pretty close to budget. I will note that in purchase services, we did have an expense related to an investigation for an event at a council meeting last year. That expense hit in this year's budget. So that's resulting in a slight overage in the purchase services line. So generally for the 2021 budget, it looks like you'll come in under budget about $58,000. Are there any questions on the 2021 projection? Okay, so then moving into the 2022 budget request, the first column is your budget for 2021. The second column is the 2022 cost to continue budget. The cost to continue budget is what we in finance create that adjust budget line items to do the same work in 2022 that was done in 2021. So those kinds of adjustments are increasing salaries to reflect employee step and longevities, and then also making some minor technical adjustments for things like telephone costs and contracts, items that are generally outside of the control of the agency. The third column is the 2022 budget request. And based on discussions with President Abbas, we have included in the 2022 request funding for an intern in the Common Council office to work full-time for 3 months. That was $10,500. And we've also included funding to restore the Alder expense accounts back to the 2020 level. There was an amendment for the 2021 budget that reduced those expense accounts from $2,425 per alder to $1,900 per alder. And this request restores that expense. So the 2022 budget request is asking for $21,000 more than our cost to continue. As part of the budget process, there are certain things that each department has to submit. One item is the transmittal memo, and this is a memo from the agency to the finance director outlining the goals and priorities. And this memo, Madeleine is attached to the Legistar file for this item. The second item she's also attached. This is a service proposal that explains changes in the budget that each agency completes. And then the last item is the line item budget, which I just previewed, and shows what the changes are by each expense category. And then finally, I just have a quick update of the budget timeline. Operating budgets were due on July 9th. So right now we're in our process of reviewing the requests. In August, the agencies briefed the mayor on their budget requests, and we in finance make our recommendations to the mayor on the operating budget. Mayor makes her decisions, and then in October, the executive budget will be introduced. On October 11th and 12th are the finance committee hearings, where the finance committee can ask questions of the agencies about their budgets. And then the week of October 18th, we have the amendment process for the finance committee. On October 25th, the finance committee votes on those amendments. And then there's a second round of amendments where the entire council can offer budget amendments, and then the budget will be adopted November 9th through the 11th. So that's a quick overview of the 2022 budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Betsy, for the detailed presentation. Any questions from the body? Alder Furman?
Thank you, Council President. Just so I'm clear, I guess based on this timeline that we're seeing, today's presentation is just an FYI for alders, and not you're not asking CCEC to approve this budget. Is that correct, President Abbas?
Yes, this is correct.
Okay, so if we have concerns about items in this budget, should we just wait for the finance budget hearing, or should we talk about that today?
I think so. It will be wise to talk right now so we can iron out those rather than doing on a finance. But if the body wish to do later, that's also fine. But I think so it might be better to collect feedback. That's the purpose of this presentation. So please feel free to.
So when it's appropriate, I'll do that. I'll let other people ask questions first. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Lemon.
Thank you. I saw that the pay rate for the intern is $20 an hour, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering, is that the standard like city salary for interns, or does it vary across departments?
I'm not sure about that. I would have to check with HR. I believe it varies, but I could check on that.
Okay, that would just be helpful to know. Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Alder Lammer. Alder Heck.
Thank you, President Abbas. I'm curious about the rationale for boosting the Alder expense accounts to previous levels.
So I can answer that question if that's okay. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So the intent is, as a lot of us working virtually and increasing the modest change to 2020 will give us an opportunity to spend on either sending our own mailing card, give us an opportunity to do a newsletter, or other investment like attending conferences, attending on a policy discussion if you have to travel, or whatever is allowable expenses are. So giving alders little more mobility and flexibility in the budget so they have that opportunity to allocate more money on outreach if they wish or desire to do that.
Thanks. I guess one thing that might be handy if it's easily producible is to see how much of our expense accounts have been used in the past year or two and how much has been left over so we can kind of see what the typical or the range of balances are at the end of the year. I know I haven't used much of mine at all because a lot of mine is related to development proposals or alcohol license proposals, the mailings, and those are typically paid by the applicant. But I appreciate what you're saying about finding other ways to communicate and using perhaps mailers, but I guess I sort of see that there needs to be a larger discussion about that, perhaps. But that's my questions and input. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. And if you don't mind, can I also provide a little input here as well? So with aldermanic account, expense account, if we have to look at the data as per your request, it could be really, vary because some alders might use more aldermanic expense account, as you mentioned, some does not. So if we're going to look at overall budget and say like, hey, we did not use $8,000 and it went into general account, that might be, I don't know how this is going to help us because some of us is using more and some of us is not using more. And, but we could come back with some sort of, as per your requested information and share that. But just wanted to share that it could be, data could be a little strange.
Yeah, I agree. We'd have to look at it carefully. And, we had the president's ad hoc committee looking at council communication strategies, and we focused a lot in that about electronic communications and shared resources and things. So we might need to look through the lens of that report too. Yeah, I still think it would be interesting to see. And I am a little hesitant about adding money to our budget in this time of structural budget deficits, but we can continue the discussion. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Vice President Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just ask that we also include some of the previous years, as in non-COVID years as well, in terms of maybe at like a 5-year span or something as to how these accounts have been used. That's it. Thank you.
Good call. Thank you. Alder McKinney.
Thank you. That's exactly the direction that I was going. Keeping consideration over the past year, we have been 100%, almost 100% virtual, which means expenses that we would have not had related to maintaining and running an office from home. And so that the year of COVID is not going to give us a good representation of what those costs are. And so I'm glad that the Vice President recommended that we look over a span of time to get a sense of how those fundings were spent. And especially, I agree with President Abbas about the opportunity to attend conferences because that's how I used mine most. That's how I used mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder McKinney. Madeline, before we go to Alder Bennett, if you don't mind, I saw the hand raised by Madeline and she shared the screen. So Madeline, why not you go ahead if you wish to speak.
I was going to say in response to the Alder's questions, thank you, Betsy, for sharing your screen, is that my predecessor, Lisa Veldrin, did keep track of your Alder expense accounts and how much you were spending. All of the accounts up through 2020, as far as I'm aware, are up to date, but admittedly, the 2021 accounts have not been balanced yet. So the screen that Betsy's showing you now should be accurate up until fiscal year 2021. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Alder Bennett.
Question. Does the leftover expenses that alders don't use, like, does that go into the general fund? Where does that money go?
Any expenses that wouldn't be used at the end of the year lapse to the general fund balance.
Okay. And I guess I'm seeing, like, so the percentages on the end is like how much of the funds were used?
Yes.
So if alders is this like generally, like, I would be interested to see like how maybe to Patrick's point, and I think and Syed made this point as well, Alder Peck and Alder Abbas made this point about like some alders use more than others, which I understand that and respect that. So like I feel like it would be interesting to take a more in-depth approach about how we allocate it, because if some alders need more to meet their district needs, like I would personally be okay with like giving some of my funds if need be to another alder that might need that. I hope I'm making sense. That some alders like have different needs than others given their districts. So why allocate this much if we're only using like 50% of it on average?
Madeline, go ahead.
I just want to address Alder Bennett's question about moving money around between different Alder accounts. From what I'm still new in this position, but from what I've been told in the past, those requests have been made, and Lisa was able to basically kind of move the money around if another Alder, overspent their account but needed some extra money.
And thank you, Madeline. And coming to Alder Bennett, your question, I think so you have a valid point. I did not see we spend, it's interesting to see how much we spent 2021, but if there is, if we are not using the budget as allocated and we have some additional, and if there is a flexibility within our alders to, give money to other alders for their consequent service, probably might be we don't need to then increase. Just looking at this chart, it makes sense. Any further question, Alder Bennett? Thank you. Alder McKinney?
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that I was most uncomfortable with, and there have been a couple of occasions where my budget was overspent, and the solution, Lisa would say, well, go and ask another alder for support. I was really uncomfortable with that, and either I made it up out of my own personal funds, but I just was uncomfortable going and asking other alders for that kind of support, and so there was no system in place where if there was one alder hardly ever spent out of their account, but it just wasn't a comfortable place for me. And there was no system in place where staff would look at different accounts and make those kinds of recommendations. So I never did it because it was not comfortable for me.
That's a good feedback, Alder McKinney. Thank you, Alder Haley.
Thanks, Chair. I think it will help as a new alder. There are many new alders at the council to see and to identify what kind of expenses that can be used for these funds. Sometimes we are not aware of how we can use these funds. So it will be helpful to see a list of items or ways that we can utilize this budget item.
Thank you, Alder Haley. I do believe during time of orientation, Karen sent a list or email to all alders about allowable expenses, but I can request Madeline to share that with all alders, not new everyone, so we all aware of that. And also, the purpose bringing the council budget here is to really collect feedback and to see how CCEC or council members who are here, part of CCE or not part of CCE, to collect some feedback from them and see what direction we as a council office want to take regarding expense account in future. Having said that, all remaining money go in general fund. And as coming back to Alder McKinney's point of view is also very important to consider. If an alder doesn't feel comfortable reaching out to fellow alders, probably we should, as a committee, we should look into giving that power to council staff so they can take care of, if we decide not to increase, take care of some of the remaining money within the parameters or whatever the criteria we set. Alder Haley, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to add, if possible, maybe streamlining those lists. As Alder McKinney expressed, some alders use more than others, and maybe there are ways I might be able to use these funds for different ways. So I don't know if it's some alders have different ways to expense, but I don't know if that's possible. Instead of decreasing or increasing, maybe perhaps expanding the scope of those, what that expense looks like, so that it can be more general rather than specific. I think some of the expense or the budget is not used because there might be some limitation in terms of using those budget.
Perfect. That sounds good. Thank you. And we will ask Madeline to probably write an email or memo, or council office can write a memo and send it to everyone with some of those questions that are key to address. Alder Furman.
Thank you. It seems like we're in the comment portion, so I want to make some comments. I will say, if you go to the Common Council webpage on the bottom, there's a Common Council policy guide, which does outline how we can spend our expense accounts, both for all new alders to see that, as well as the general public that are listening. I think sticking within those parameters is important. I think having a budget is important. I think having just a fund where some people can use more, some people can use less is not necessarily a good idea. I know in the past I've had alders ask for money from my account, and I've had plenty, and that was fine, and I've given them. I think there are alders, like, for example, in District 6, where they end up having to spend a ton of money sending out postcards for meetings that can't be reimbursed by developers, instances like that. But if we have alders that decide they want to go to conferences or buy books and publications, there needs to be limits to that. I mean, at some point, there isn't an unlimited amount of funds. And so I think the system where each alder is allocated a certain amount of money and, should be spending accordingly is appropriate. And having to ask your colleagues if that you can take some money from their account because you have some expenses that are above and beyond is entirely appropriate, and actually should make you think twice about whether or not you should be spending money on certain things. At the budget overall, I'm a little bit disappointed that we're asking for increases both in the expense accounts as well as for personnel. I think we've heard at finance we have an $18 million structural deficit. I think the council coming to the coming to ourselves essentially and saying, hey, yeah, I know other departments are having to cut. The mayor asked everybody to cut 5%. We typically, as a small department, don't do that. But us even asking for, it's a minimal amount of money I get, but us asking for more money sends the wrong message to the rest of the city. I actually don't think there's a ton of value in having an intern for 3 months. I think it takes a lot of effort to get an intern up and running. And by the time they're going to know what they need to know, it's time for them to go. And so I appreciate the training opportunity of having an intern, but don't necessarily think based on our where we are with our budget that it makes sense for us to be spending more money on something like that. So, I understand the budget's already been submitted. I will probably at finance support some amendments to get it back to just a cost to continue, because I think it's a mistake for us to be asking for increases when every other department in our city will not be getting increases based on our structural deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furman, for your feedback. Alder Bennett.
Yeah, I just want to quickly follow up on that. That, like, I don't know, personally, I'm just kind of feeling about getting more money. I mean, I was literally in the library board the other day, and they were discussing whether or not they can keep their air conditioning at a comfortable level that they have it right now, because they literally just don't have money to not, what am I trying to say? They don't have any more money to take away to meet that 5% for agency cuts. Also, I just wanted to put it out there that I feel like because this is going to finance, and but if amendments are passed there or whatnot, wouldn't we want to have this discussion after the finance meeting? But I'm not trying to come at anyone. I think this is important, but that's just my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Alder Bennett, for your thoughts. I think so. There's two parts here. One is pretty clear, looking at this number 54, 51, 55%, 39, I think so. Council staff can write a memo on what are the mechanisms to use. And thank you, Alder Furman, for referring the Common Council webpage. Sometimes webpage is also not updated. So I will make sure that information there is accurate and we share accurate information with all the alders. The second part is internship, and there's a two part of it. First is, do we don't want internship because of the fiscal reason, or we do not want an internship because we do not feel it have any value? So these are two different things where we can debate. If the issue is fiscal, perhaps there are ways to look around it. And we should find those ways and help the future generation to learn about how city government work. So that's really important. Second is also for the council staff, we are always underserved, understaffed. Perhaps this is a broader discussion and broader debate to have. Some of us might agree and some of us might disagree because of the way we all work on different policy issues. Some of us have full-time jobs, some of us don't have full-time jobs. So everybody have its own capacity. I do think so there is a value for an intern on a both way for us to learn, but also to give back to the community as well. And also mention the internship program, which we are looking at. It's a city internship program, which really focus on equity and people of color and giving them opportunities, especially those who really want to learn about policy. So I will encourage my colleague, before they really kill this idea, I would really want you guys to divide the money away from the internship. And if you don't want to allocate money, then that's fine. That's a policy decision. But killing the whole internship will also take advantage, opportunity away from person of color, and especially the equity we keep in this budget to provide that opportunity. Because I do find there are some ways where we can still fund without going into council budget. Perhaps in next couple of meetings, I could explore in those ideas, but I really appreciate all of your feedback, because that's the whole reason to bring this budget in front of you all and really look into, with a lens of equity, can we increase, decrease, or however we want to proceed. So really appreciate that. Alder Furman.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to throw out something as an FYI for both you and the body. The TFOG's implementation work group this morning actually was talking about how we do think at some point we need to have a council discussion about the referendum results, full-time versus part-time. And as part of that discussion, I do think there are things that came out, for example, in the chief of staff position discussion, as well as today on, what is the role and the resources that alders have that I think would be quite appropriate to have as part of that conversation. The TFOG's report was pretty clear that they believed full-time made sense. The council obviously needs to decide what its next steps are, but even if we don't go full-time, I don't think there is anybody that would disagree that we as alders have limited resources. How the resources are applied, whether that's full-time, part-time, more staff, et cetera, is certainly, I think, a great opportunity to have a longer discussion in the future. So just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Furman. Alder McKinney.
Thank you very much. And this is a very interesting conversation that we're moving into. And we're talking about a structural deficit. What we're really talking about is two things. One is staffing capacity within the council office to assist in the efficiency of what the council office does. That's quite different from, whether the council is full-time, part-time, all of that. That's a different, as I said, that's the president said, that's a different conversation. The opportunity to have an internship within the council office and to have an internship that has some compensation makes sense. I'm glad that we're looking at whether that's $20 an hour. So that's a question that I really want to take a look at. But to have an intern working in the office on projects that will assist the efficiency of the overall programming and also give an opportunity for our communities. And we're always talking about communities of color and all of that. And so that is a term that is used so loosely. To have that opportunity to have a place where individuals that we're talking about could work and learn and get a feeling of what it really means to serve the community is a good thing. And so I would hate that it's discarded as something that's not valid and not important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alder Furman, your hand is raised. Do you wish to speak? All right, thank you. Karen, are you here? Is Karen here in the meeting or not? I do not see her. I was going to ask her, I don't know if somebody from HR is here or DCR or probably Madeline. You could answer that. While we were looking for the internship program, do you remember the name of the program run by DCR?
One moment, let me look into that. I think Karen had it written on our budget proposal. I will circle right back with you.
Thank you. Alder Benford.
President Abbas, was it the Aspire program?
Yes, thank you very much.
And if I may, President Abbas, I just wanted to comment about interns. So I certainly understand fiscal considerations, but I hope that this body would also consider that it's more than just what interns can do for us. As Alder McKinney said, there's been a concerted effort to bring in more BIPOC marginalized people to understand city government processes. So $20 an hour, when I was a kid growing up, that was unheard of. I was lucky to make $4 an hour, but I don't want to get bogged down in the hourly wage as much as the opportunity to instill leadership and civic engagement with young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to continue, Vice President Martin, just 1 second, just to continue the the discussion Alder Benford mentioned about that program. Karen is also here to discuss that program is actually really focused on equity and people of color and getting them opportunity in city. Just for the comparison, and we should not compare different departments because each department work very differently. Our legal department have 2 interns right now. Planning staff have interns who provide opportunity to young youth, especially people of color, about planning, about legal system. We as a Common Council have an opportunity for us to give back to BIPOC community, having a real policy, education, and working with alders who are elected bodies. So with that, Alder Martin. Sorry, Vice President Martin.
Oh, thank you, President Abbas. You actually, between Alder Benford's comments and yours, I think kind of go into the purpose of what this internship involves. This is a chance for us to give back to and help with educating and providing real world experience to especially people of color, Black, Indigenous, Latino immigrants, everybody. That's the goal of this program. And as far as pay, when we were talking about this position, we thought that it was important for us to show our values. And our values are that somebody deserves to be paid for their work. Interns are frequently not paid. And this most certainly limits the possibilities for folks who don't have, enough money to take a job that doesn't pay them for a whole summer. So this is an opportunity. I know that that for us to give back. I know personally, I have managed interns in the past, and I think it's very important that we not only ask them to do work for us, but create a kind of curriculum for them as well, so they learn how city government works. So this is not a position that is just going to say, all right, everybody's going to forward emails of this type to this intern and they will answer them. This is an attempt to give a possibility, an internship possibility to somebody who might not be able to take one otherwise. And it's also a concerted effort to make sure that the experience is not just one way, that the intern is actually learning besides the tasks that they are assigned. So I would hope that folks could look at this particular item kind of in that lens as a giving back rather than this is someone here to help us kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Martin. You articulated really well. Alder Bennett.
Thank you. Well, as the honorary student here that has had internships recently, no offense to anyone, I just kind of want to speak to what it has meant to me to have internships in the past. Freshman year, I was able to take an internship at a small bank. I was paid $10 an hour, and in that time, I literally rearranged their entire record system. After that, because I had that internship, I was able to land another internship the following summer at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the top 4 accounting firms in globally. So it was very exciting, and pay grade moved up to $20 an hour. But and that program was specifically catered to people of color and people from marginalized backgrounds. And what it's meant to me is for me to have the skills and able to be able to do this job, to be able to organize myself and be able to, I guess it's helped me gain confidence in a lot of ways. And in the grand scheme of this, it's $2,250 to give a young person an experience that will probably change their life, because this is life-changing work. and open a lot of doors for them. And it'd be kind of cool to say, yeah, the city of Madison helped do that. So I support the internship program. It would, I can't express enough how much it would mean to a young professional to be able to receive this job. And hopefully one of the things that was discussed during the campaign and I talked to some of y'all about was keeping young people of color, young professionals, young students here in Madison. And this internship program can be an opportunity to do so.
Thank you very much, Alder Bennett. Alder Haley.
Thank you, Chair. I think everyone articulated very well. And for me, what I'm seeing is this is really a life-changing opportunity and giving back to the community in terms of internship. If we are, in a very strict budget, I will recommend perhaps instead of increasing our aldermanic expense, perhaps we can use that, increase that we are proposing for the internship if we are really limited with budget. So my recommendation is instead of increasing our aldermanic expense, perhaps we can use that money for the internship. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Haley. Alder Furman.
I'm sorry, I'll try to be really brief. I'm totally for internship, the concept of internship, but I do think we need to pick our priorities. If we don't increase our alder account, we're still increasing, the budget by putting funds towards an internship. But one of the things, again, that I heard so loud and clear when we were talking the chief of staff position is what our expectations of staff are, and having staff work with an intern is incredibly intensive. And so I just think we all just better recognize, if that is what our priority is making sure that we're giving back to the community in that way, that other things have to give because we don't have unlimited resources. So I just ask that the council be smart about, one, defining what the internship looks like, what tasks, and as Vice President Martin well put, what tasks that intern would do, and then also what we're willing to sacrifice. Asking our staff to do for us. I mean, I've heard alders do everything from saying that they wanted staff to be able to attend events for them in their districts, work on complicated budget amendments, all sorts of things. They can't do everything. They are working way too much, and so we just need to be very cognizant of that. Even when we add additional staff, there's a lot on their plate, so we need to be smart about the priorities. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Furman. Alder Heck.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I mean, I agree that this internship is likely to be potentially a life-changing experience for somebody, and it sounds like an amazing opportunity. But I just want to remind alders that when we make decisions to fund a new endeavor of any sort, we are effectively also choosing to cut something at the same time because there is no extra money. And we can't make a decision about some other aspect of the city budget to cut if we add this $10,000 to the council budget at this point. But I just wanted to remind alders that there's no free money out there, and we do have to make intelligent choices and informed choices. Thank you.
Thank Alder Heck. Thank you all for your feedback on the council budget. Just looking at the time, we would like to move forward. Any further questions? I do not see any hand raised. Next discussion is agenda item number 3, file number 66490, virtual and in-person meetings. You saw an email from a council leadership. I will start that. From Vice President Martin and myself about the path forward. We tried to listen in the last in-person and virtual meeting. We listened all the orders very carefully, and we we choose a path forward which can provide an opportunity for residents to engage through virtual world, but also giving an opportunity to those who have literacy barriers, who have barriers through internet, through laptop, or they have disability, IT disability, or other barriers, to have them opportunity to come in person too. As well as in that email, we also mentioned about the collaboration and the value to see your colleague and create a culture in Common Council and understand each other, and having an opportunity which is extremely valuable to meet before or after a meeting. That could be really helpful for us as a body to move forward. And we really hope the proposal the council leadership put in front of you would be acceptable for all of you, because I see a very good compromise or way forward to also that proposal also give us an opportunity to collect data and see how's our registration in person or virtual work. So with that, we are happy to, and please, before I open the floor, Vice President Martin, would you like to add anything to that?
Just that we are looking at this as kind of a transition period, because we have gotten used to a certain way of doing business, and our constituents have gotten used to us doing our business in a certain way. So this is a kind of a compromise, understanding the issues that many alders may face regarding childcare or other issues that can affect their attendance, etc. But also acknowledging that we will be going back to an in-person schedule, and that this is kind of the transition time. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alder Furman. And just before Alder Furman, you speak, if you click on the agenda item, there's attached dates, so you can see exactly which is virtual, which is in person. Alder Furman, please go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. Having been involved in the TFOG's work and now the TFOG's implementation work group, I wanted to say that one of the biggest things was that TFOG's tried to look at was accessibility related to in-person meetings. And there are lots of recommendations in the TFOG's report talking about providing childcare at meetings, validating parking for people attending meetings, varying meeting locations throughout the city so people have easier access to the meetings, allowing video testimony or live electronic participation at the meetings, that virtual actually really did a great job of helping with. And so one of the questions I have from the note that leadership sent out today was what could be shared with us is a better idea of how much feedback we got from residents pertaining to issues with technology, either not, as noted, not having access to internet computers or being able to dial into a meeting, the barriers that were created there. Is there any sort of quantifiable number of feedback that we got based on that from the community, whether it's calls to the council office or emails to individuals that helped go into the leadership's decision on saying that was something that we need to go back in person to fix?
Alder Furman, we did not have any scientific data either in favor of participation or either people have barriers, but it came to, it's very clear when the COVID came, especially in a neighborhood association as well as a community level, there are people who attend neighborhood meeting because it's virtual accessible, but there are also people who does not because they have trouble logging in on the virtual world and on login. Today, as an example, people who are, we did not conduct any research, but we have a meeting today. Me, Alder Heck, and Alder Martyr was in a meeting with city employees and FSME people. And the president said of FSME, I was having a hard time clicking on the link and getting logged in on the online to give my testimony, and I miss giving my testimony on one of the agenda item. And that is coming from a person who know how to use laptop. I'm not saying one way or another way is better. The underline here is to find a path forward, probably coming to your point, which is valid point. If you think so that we need to collect data, probably we should go on an in-person and also virtual. And then we have both comparison by end of December, where we stand.
Yeah, Council President, and I do think, one of the things that could have easily been done is setting up an overflow room at CCB with the council meeting on a television and a laptop there. And for people that wanted to go in person in the public that had barriers, they could have done that. I just think, unfortunately, and I just want to be on the record, I think by going virtual, we are cutting out a significant amount of participation that we have seen and benefited from, leaving virtual and going in person. I think virtual has opened up these meetings to people that didn't previously have access, and I think that's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furman, for your feedback. Alder Benford.
Thank you, President Abbas. To piggyback on Alder Furman, so, I was on the council in the past, and I think about those in-person meetings and some of those marathon meetings. So there's two issues. I bring that up because there's this personal bias, but what's most important is how do we do our due diligence to ensure those that we serve have their voices heard? So, there's that issue. And then as policymakers, as alders, what is our personal preferences? So I'm not a scientist. We hear about variants, and the fact that you all were nimble to be able to switch to virtual is very impressive. Not only you, but schools and teachers. So my own personal preference is that, I don't have any love lost for those old council chambers and the notion of building camaraderie and things like that. I think there's other ways to do it. So from speaking once again my own personal bias, I think there's advantage with these late night meetings. I guarantee you my chairs are more comfortable than the council chairs. I feel like I could be more present under this format. And I'm not saying this for pity, please understand, but I'm a cancer survivor, and I think about some of the medical issues that maybe some of my colleagues, and then childcare. I had someone say to me, well, you alders with kids, you knew what you were signing up for. Well, no, we didn't. And even if we did, that doesn't mean the old ways are the best. So as we talk about providing childcare, we all were reminded with the last conversation that everything costs. So I just want my colleagues to keep that in mind, that, the TFOGs, the intent was, at least what I believe after reading the report and following from the peripherally, is how do we get more people involved, the underrepresented people? Well, I promise you, as someone who's lived that reality, it's not going back in person. This virtual way is to ensure in the future that we can continue to be accessible for those that normally wouldn't have the opportunities to serve like we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Benford. Alder Foster.
Thank you. I don't have strong personal feelings about the two. Definitely understand the perspectives that have been shared here. I am really focused on the accessibility for members of the public question. As folks have talked about the TFOG's recommendations, and the implementation group did just talk about that today. We're in that section of recommendations that we'll be working to bring to the council for action. When TFOG talked about this, particularly around the ability for people to give testimonies via telephone or video, this was all pre-COVID. There was a presentation from IT staff that really talked about how big of a challenge that would be. And I remember the frustration in those meetings and the intensity of that recommendation from TFOGs about this, this really needs to be a standard that we adopt as a city. Fast forward to COVID, our IT department did an amazing job, got us all up on Zoom. And I feel like we've been living with it long enough now that it has become an expectation that is an option, even if the meetings themselves, do go back to in person. So I guess I mostly have a question around, I think Sarah gave some kind of update at some point during that last conversation around in-person, virtual, hybrid. And it sounded like they were working on, not for BCC meetings, but at least for council, that they were working towards being able to perhaps accommodate members of the public being able to either call in or video in for testimony. So I guess, are there any updates on that front? And if it is something that could be implemented sometime in the near term, would it be worth waiting until we have that to not enter into a phase where we're sort of taking away something that the public has had for the last year plus? That's my question.
Thank you. Sarah is not here. IT is not here. My understanding is I can speak and Alder Martin, please chime in. At this moment, the capacity IT have, they can do either full virtual, either full in-person. They cannot really register people in a separate room while the meeting is going virtual. Having said that, they are Alder Foster looking into hybrid structure, and the room of CCB will be ready in October. Hopefully by then have all the technology what we need for hybrid structure, but then it's up to council to create that budget and allocation of the staff and IT. So infrastructure wise, we will be in position of hybrid by end of October, but that does not mean we will go on a hybrid structure because again, Sarah mentioned all in detail about their capacity as IT. So right now there's only two options. Long story, just come back to your question is either we go full in person, either full virtual. And if you look into that, the schedule we create, we were very thoughtful as a leadership. We created one in-person meeting in September, one in-person in October, and then for budget deliberation, all the public comments are November 9th virtual. But then deliberation is November 10th and 11th is in person. So we kept that in mind to keep that opportunity open for community because we know there will be concern, and then we have one in person in December. So we have more virtual than in person. But again, the intent is, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I personally, again, don't want to bring my personal experience. For me, virtual is better because I have a little kids and I can go upstairs, just look after them and just put them, if they're crying, just turn off my camera, go 2 minutes up there, take care of them. But as a council leader, it came to my knowledge, there are a lot of communication, misunderstanding of communication between alders, and it's really hard to schedule a separate time to talk to each other. I think so it will be deeply benefit us as a council, which is almost 8 of us is new and many of us haven't seen each other. It will create a very good harmony, and that's the hope. Who knows if that worked out or not, but the hope is, the intent is very positive to create that bridge. And after December 7th, which is last in person, probably close to then we can see either this is working or not working. And at least at that point, we have a data point. Hey, this is the data point. And by then, during the budget, we will be also very clear, either we will be successful to put something in hybrid structure money or not. And if this is not the way, might be we can revisit our policy, either go full in person or full virtual or do some alternative. We can have more further discussion. But this particular plan we really create with the eye of, collecting more data around it. So, Alder Lammer.
Thank you. I think the compromise model makes sense for now, and as we work towards the hybrid option being a possibility, I just wanted to remind folks that being virtual only doesn't mean that it's more accessible for everybody. As an example, there was an internet outage in my neighborhood during a council meeting day a couple of weeks ago, and I was driving around the city trying to find somewhere to pop up with internet access, and I was able to find a location, but folks in my area wouldn't have been able to attend virtually if they wanted to. And not everybody has internet access either. And I have received feedback from folks in my district who would prefer to have in person. So those are really the only things that I wanted to share. And I do agree that we need to implement the TFOG's recommendations to make the meetings as accessible as possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder Lammer. Alder Bennett.
I wanted to go back to the intention part of it. I was just wondering, for the in-person meetings, kind of what was your thoughts around the two that are not regarding the budget, or 3 of them? Was it just to test out what an in-person meeting would be like for a regular council meeting? And for the 2 that are budget, new. So is that not will we not have public comment during those 2 meetings?
So historically, we and please, some of the senior members are here. Alder McKinney, you or other alders can please chime in. Feel free to. Historically, my experience is we usually get public comment on the day one, all the public comments. So last year budget, we took all the comments day one, and then we did deliberation next day, and there's no public comment because we already listened on all the agenda items. So then we go either capital first day, operational second day. So this is the same model here. We kept it as a virtual because as we expect there will be a lot of public input on this budget particular. So day one will be all collecting the feedback, and day 2 and 3, which is in person, will be deliberation on the budget, capital and operational. Please feel free to chime in if I'm wrong.
Okay. And then like the in-person meetings, was there anything like strategically about that? Like, will we be having any specific discussions, or is it just like for this December 21st, October 19th, and December 2nd or 7th? Is that just to test what an in-person meeting would be like?
So I'm not very clear. I already explained the strategy behind it. It's just to provide opportunity alders to meet each other and create a sense of culture. It's very hard to, not to disrespect anyone, in a virtual world, it's very hard to create that relationship and connection. At least can speak on personally on how I feel. It's very hard. I have to put a lot of effort to conduct a meeting with my fellow alders to see them. So that's intent is to really create that culture, and also not only culture, also Alder Lemmer mentioned, it will be also a good case study for us to see accessibility to how in-person work, and then we can revisit our policy.
Okay. And then I was wondering, have you, when this was drafted, did you discuss like anything about like confusion with the public about switching back and forth between virtual and in-person meetings?
So there will be a notice ahead of a time. This is virtual only, or this is in-person only. That's what the IT recommended to do. So there will be a very clear guideline. This is virtual or in-person. Vice President Martin, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I would just say that the notification of what kind of meeting it will be this particular week is going to have to also fall on us, and we are going to have to make sure as alders, when we communicate with our constituents, that we have like a broad, it's going to be alternating until December, but also the week of, making sure that we are letting people know. So it does add a bit on our own workloads, but we're just going to have to work harder on making sure that people, that the word is out there.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Bennett. Alder Foster.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on my previous comment. If possible, it would be really helpful to ask IT specifically what it would take, both including the financial piece. I really think this is important enough that we, if we can get information back, I would like to try and take action to allow for that virtual testimony rather than just waiting, through the end of this year. So, I mean, we were able to really act quickly when we had to for COVID, and I really do. I'm really concerned about losing access for folks, and I definitely hear what people are saying about increasing access with the in-person part, but if we could prioritize seeing what could be done sooner to allow for that, even if we're in person, I think would be really helpful for the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Alder Foster. Fair question. Madeline, could you please note that question so we can forward it to City IT Department, get more information.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Stefan, really quick question to IT. How much time do we have?
So we have up until 6:15.
6:15, so 35 minutes. So we can go to the next agenda item then. New business agenda item number 4, file number 66211. Adoption of an updated emergency management plan for the city of Madison. Edwin, I believe you are presenting that.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Fire Marshal with the Fire Department. I'm also the Emergency Management Coordinator. What you have before you is an update to our Emergency Management Plan. The original plan was approved or adopted by Council in 2009. Needless to say, after 12 years, it's time to update something like this. Actually, we started the process back in 2019. We hired a contractor to come in and work with us just to make sure that the plan looks at emergency management through a more contemporary lens. Another goal really of the update was to make sure that the plan complied with the Civil Rights Act and that the plan was all inclusive of all the residents and everyone in the community. There have been a few municipalities throughout the country that after disasters, they've experienced some lawsuits and some concerns about how some people were treated during the emergency. And we, as I say, we just want to make sure that our plan did not have those holes in it. We also really looked at the old plan and decided that it needed to lose some pages. If you look at an emergency management plan that is 100 pages and hangs on the shelf, that's just what it's going to do, the 100 pages. So we really wanted to get the document down to something that's much more manageable. So that's what you have before you. It's like a slimmed down version of the plan that addresses some contemporary issues and hopefully does comply with the Civil Rights Act.
Alder Foster, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ed. So the document said final draft December 19. I think you just mentioned this was kind of the work, I guess, largely happened before COVID. What did you take the sort of opportunity of having gone through a pretty significant emergency to make changes since then, or are these just changes that were pulled together before COVID?
We did. We went back and looked at it during and after COVID. But this plan is a very general, that kind of 10,000 foot look at emergency management. And it is not intended to be a playbook for a specific hazard or event or, pandemic versus weather event. It is just a general framework for emergency management. It's intended to be an all hazards plan. But yes, we did look at it.
Okay, thanks. One thing that came up during the COVID emergency that there was a fair amount of discussion, including at CCEC, was really around the role of the Common Council during emergency, including the question of communication and getting information. At one point there was even a recommendation to have a group kind of dig in there. I didn't get interest to start that work group back then, but in looking through this version, I see almost no mention of the Common Council. I'm wondering, I guess, first, if you have any thoughts about that just offhand, and if not, would it make sense to stop and think through that a little bit? And maybe this is an opportunity for us to figure out what that right role of the Common Council is and get it inserted in here somewhere.
Sure, yeah, that came up last week at the Public Safety Review Committee. And, we did look at this version with that in mind. And until last week, we were kind of under the position that, we use existing communication processes, whether it's through the mayor's office or through department heads, in their day in and day out activities. But since then, had a conversation with Marcy Paulson in the city attorney's office, and Marcy has a proposal to fill that gap. Marcy, would you like to talk about what you're thinking?
So after I talked to Ed, I didn't go to PSRC, but I talked to Ed about the concerns. Sorry, my camera's off. And what we suggested, or what the suggestion I had, was including the chief of staff. I know when we had the EOC operated last summer and we had issues with protests and that going on, Kwesi would come into the EOC and then provide updates to the alders. So we were thinking that may be a way to have the chief of staff be at the EOC meetings, and then the chief of staff would be responsible for informing the alders to ensure you all were kept up to date on what was going on in the EOC.
Thanks for that suggestion. I guess I would just say, for me, that didn't really seem to fill that gap this last time. I mean, the updates that we got from the chief of staff were basically and essentially just the public updates that went out through the COVID communication channel. So I looked, I think, at every single one of them. I don't remember ever learning of anything that was happening other than what I saw through the regular communications that went out to the public. So I haven't like dug into that issue, but I think it was a major issue. So I guess my recommendation would be, I don't know if it's CCEC or, I'm kind of looking towards council president if he has any ideas, but I think it would be before sort of approving an update to this. I think this is an area that we should probably, and I think council needs to take some responsibility to think through, where do we see ourselves? It might include writing in chief of staff in here, but it might, maybe there's a role for the council president. I'm not really sure, but I think it was a pretty big gap this last go around. So I think it's worth looking into. And just one real brief note, specifically that I saw in the section on emergency declaration, which I think is page 23 of the document. I was a little surprised to see that described as the mayor is empowered to declare by ordinance an emergency, et cetera, et cetera. And there is some reference somewhere else in the documents that does acknowledge that the Common Council also can. But my understanding is that really the statutory authority for that rests with the Common Council, and the mayor can only do that if council's not able to meet. So it sort of feels a little backwards the way that it's written in here, and really describing as if the mayor is the primary authority to declare emergency. So that also feels kind of fundamental, and maybe it's connected with this question of what's the role of the Common Council. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Alder Foster. Actually, you hit all those questions and comments I was going to do. So you stole my thunder. So just to finishing some of the thoughts along with Alder Foster, I strongly think so last time we really struggled a lot with having council office, especially the chief of staff. It was very hard for us to collect information. And as we are elected body, there was constituent have easy access to us rather than the city staff. And we had a really hard time really collecting information and creating that bridge during the emergency time. I will highly recommend this particular, especially the planning staff team, emergency planning staff team, either having a council president / chief of staff. If we don't have a chief of staff, if we don't have any position who's leading council office, then council president should be part of emergency planning staff, because the president is elected by the council and represent and can create that bridge between the information. And without that information, it's really hard. And also coming back to Alder Foster point, I agree. The council should be the primary body who could declare emergency, and in absence of council cannot meet, then the mayor office could declare emergency. But that's also my 2 cents on that. Thank you. And thank you very much, Edwin, for coming and presenting that. I really appreciate that.
You bet. Can I offer a quick comment on
yes, please,
involving council in the planning process? And I think Marcy can address this probably better than I can, but when we first started this whole process back in 2008, 2009, I think it was, there was considerable discussion on this. And one of the things that we recognized early is that, to involve or to make the emergency planning staff team some type of a public meeting was a bit of a problem, because that's where we formulate strategic and tactical plans for different hazards. And by having that at a public process, then those documents become public documents, and we could expose some of our strategies for protecting the city to people that would want to harm the city. We intentionally had that emergency planning staff team created as a staff team, not an official committee or something like that.
Thank you, Edwin. Alder Heck.
Thanks, President Abbas, and thanks, Ed. We had a good discussion at PSRC about this, and I appreciate the fact that you thought further about it. I agree with the comments of Alder Foster and President Abbas, though, that it would be good to make sure we look at this closely, that we understand what you just said about any exposure of information. But I do think that we learned, I think you explained at PSRC that there are kind of 2 types of events in terms of duration, and that oftentimes even communication with, let's say, council leadership or chief of staff, if we have one, is not really feasible. But for longer term events, I think didn't you say that perhaps there could be some way to fold in more council participation, whether it's just a representative at EOC meetings, and maybe you could just mention that the different kinds of events in terms of duration that you mentioned at PSRC.
Oh, sure. We've activated EOC for winter storms, short duration activations. We've activated the EOC for presidential visits or presidential candidate visits. Last summer, certainly we did kind of modified virtual EOC activations with the civil unrest and what have you. Certainly the longest EOC activation was the pandemic, and the EOC was about 15, 16 months. Second to that was the flooding in 2018. And that, I believe we went for 16 or 17 days off and on. Sometimes, 18-hour days, and other times, like on the weekend, we'd be there just for 3 or 4 or 5 hours. During the power outage, that activation, that was about 6 or 7 hours. But then again, there've been other, like I think the small tornado on Friar Lane on the west side, we were at the EOC for a couple hours in the middle of the night, and decided that police and fire had it under control in the field, and they didn't need our support. So we went home. So yeah, there's a wide range of EOC activations.
Thanks. Just one other question. I understand this. This has been on the back burner for a little while. Is there any motivation to get this through quickly, other than that you kind of want to move on to other things?
There's no time schedule on this, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alder Heck. Alder Foster.
Thank you. I think that's a really important point that Alder Heck brought up about differentiating between, and clearly this COVID emergency was, very unique and significant. But I think that's part of why this gap maybe was just highlighted during that really long-term emergency, where it wasn't just responding to something real quick that probably doesn't require any involvement of Common Council, but when so many longer-term decision-making and fundamental changes to normal city operations, happen like they did through COVID. I think that's where that gap was really felt strongly. And I guess it might be helpful to get some clarification up to this point that you raised, which, it makes sense, this question of like public information. It's very easy to understand why it's important to be able to have open conversations in that setting, work through things that may not be ready for public distribution, that need to be thought through. So that all makes sense to me. I don't think, though, that simply having, let's say, council president in attendance, that doesn't by itself make all of that information public. If it were maybe sent to them via email, then that would be a public record. Or if if a quorum of the council attended, then it would be noticed and would be sort of public. But maybe Marcy can chime in here, but my understanding is that you absolutely could have, for example, council president in attendance, being able to participate, and that doesn't necessarily require public disclosure of any of the information that was shared there. And I think that might be part of where that gap was. I think with the chief of staff is, perhaps the chief of staff got to hear a lot of that information, but then because they were sharing it with the council via email, whatever they would share to the whole council via email would all of a sudden become public. So I think that's where maybe the communication didn't really happen. So I think that's maybe one area that could really be explored. And I think there might be a solution in there that's somewhere in between, I think, what we're talking about.
Thank you, Alder Foster. So we have to take an action on this particular item. Alder Heck.
Thanks, President Abbas. I'll move that we refer this item to a future unspecified CCE meeting, and I will explain my motion further if I get a second.
I will second.
It's moved and seconded. Alder Heck, please go ahead.
Thank you. I do think this document is, something we need to do. We need to do it relatively quickly and get this thing finalized. But I think there are enough lingering questions that we need to talk this over. And I think that I'm not sure exactly who and how we can do that, but Ed obviously knows everything about this document, and maybe with the assistance of Marcy, we can a few of us can kind of knock out some ideas for making sure that communication and also empowerment of council somehow can happen without disturbing the process too much.
Thank you, Alder Heck. On your motion, Alder Figuraco.
Actually, all my questions were already answered. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. And I agree with you, Alder Heck. Perhaps council leadership, along with some alders who have interest and worked on this framework, we could regroup and discuss some of the path forward in a timely manner. I agree with you. With that motion, anybody object to vote unanimously? Please raise your hand. I do not see any objection. It moved unanimously. Thank you very much. So, Stefan, we have 17 minutes, correct?
That's correct.
All right. I will say, let's take a stab on that next agenda item. And if that goes really long, we can always do a motion to refer to next meeting if that's okay with the body. Or if the body want to refer it, we can discuss next CCC meeting. Vice President Martin?
I personally would like to refer. I do believe that there is going to be some substantial conversation, and I do not want us to overload our tech support and folks that need time between this meeting and the next.
Well, then, Alder Heck, second. Well, I will consider your comment as a motion to move future meeting, and Alder Heck, that's second. Any question or comments on a motion? I do not see any hand raised, so it's passed unanimously unless there's objection. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
All right, second.
Second.
Perfect. It's moved in second. Thank you all. See you at the Common Council meeting. Thanks. Bye.